This story might make you feel uncomfortable when it's dark. You might want to keep all the lights on or at least use a night light. While I tell you this story, I will be digging an underground home under my main house. Let's start our journey. Today's story comes from the r/NoSleep subreddit. A user named SatterDead wrote it. The title is 3 Days in the Dark. When I was 8 years old, my older brother Elliot disappeared. He was only 13 years old. Older brothers and sisters often seem like heroes to younger kids. He just didn't come home one day. People searched for him for many days. They looked everywhere, but they could not find any sign of him. I was too young to fully understand how serious this was, so I stayed in my room. I played with my Lego sets. I really hoped someone would knock on the door and tell me everything was okay. That knock never came. They never found him. As days turned into weeks, the big search parties stopped. But long after everyone else gave up, I kept looking by myself. I would walk down paths that no one had checked yet. I kept a crumpled map in my pocket. On the map, I had drawn circles around places Elliot liked to go. I was determined to check every single one. People don't just disappear forever. It's not that simple. But after a while, there were no more places to check. There were no more circles to draw on my map. And Elliot was still gone. The last thing he said to me was, "Later, Gator." I think you never really feel okay about something that ends without answers. When your mind faces a question it cannot solve, it keeps looking for answers in everything you do. I became very interested in puzzles and hard brain games. Not because they were fun, but because not solving mysteries made me feel very uneasy. I did very well in school. I was also very active in the debate club. Again, this wasn't because I enjoyed it. It was because I really hated not knowing things. As I got older, I started helping with search and rescue teams. I made sure the local police knew I was willing to help. I told them I would gladly give my time. My thinking was this: if I couldn't find Elliot, maybe finding someone else's missing brother or sister would help me feel a little better. At the very least, it might give me some peace and let me sleep at night. I know many people say you should move on, but there are limits to what a person can just get over. I am now in my early 30s. You might forget what a person's face looks like. You might forget the dreams you had when you were young, but you cannot erase the effect they had on your life. You cannot ignore your own experiences and the lasting hurt caused by those years of not knowing. Even if I never heard Elliot's name again, the big change in my life's path, that sudden sharp turn, stays with me forever. I want to tell you about a search I joined several years ago. By that time, I had been on many organized searches. I knew some of the people involved. I knew what equipment to use. I arrived early. I had taken time off from my job. I put on the bright safety vest, gloves, and backpack. The backpack had a radio, water, a flashlight, a couple of chocolate bars, a first aid kit, and a waterproof bag. I had never personally found someone during a search, but that didn't mean it couldn't happen. You have to believe in the best possible outcome. We were not given GPS devices. This surprised me. It turned out our goal was to go underground. So we were given special masks to filter the air. These would protect us from dust and bad air. The person who was missing was a 17-year-old who liked to explore old city places. I live in a city with a big subway system. He had been exploring an old and used station on the edge of the city. His family was alerted by a social media post. The post gave a general area, but the details were not clear. To help the search, they turned the electricity back on for that part of the tunnels. Most of the emergency lights were made to work for many years, so moving around should not have been too hard. We were split into different zones and teams. We were told clearly to stay only in the lit hallways and passages. But because some parts of the station were abandoned before they were finished building, there were dark, unfinished areas. If we found such a place, we were told to report it right away and wait for more instructions. With that, we started. I felt a little disappointed. I wanted to see the abandoned station platform itself. People said it was huge. Instead, I was sent to one of the service tunnels. This tunnel was originally meant to hold heating pipes, but those pipes were never put in. Instead, there were parallel lines carved into the walls. Sometimes there were holes in the ceiling. You could tell that the project must have stopped suddenly, surprising everyone. I found a whole toolkit left behind near a doorway that was only half installed. Some personal items were still inside it. I was part of a 4-person team. We walked down the hallway slowly and carefully. We called out the missing person's name as we went. We stayed in our assigned search area. We kept talking to the supervisor on the radio. It was hard to figure out what the different spaces were meant for. We would sometimes find whole rooms that were almost empty. This made it hard to describe where we were. Was this supposed to be a control room? Or just a place for pipes? Where exactly on the map was this supposed to be? We came to a very long hallway. It split into 3 different paths. While staying close enough to hear each other, we decided to split up. I walked to the very end of the hallway. There I found a big door. It looked almost completely black. Felt very heavy, like cast iron. I thought it might be a security door. Maybe it led to an underground shelter. I tried to talk to my teammates on the radio, but I got no answer. I sent a message over the radio while I struggled with the door. Beyond the door was total darkness. The lights were off. A quick note, dear listeners. Why do people always split up? It seems like common sense that when you divide your group, something bad will happen. I was looking at a dark room at the end of the hallway. Specifically, the one on the right, the second one from the right, past the boilers. The operator on the radio said, "Keep using your radio and leave the door open. Do not go so far that you lose sight of the light." "Understood," I said. I stepped into the room. It was a little smaller than the hallway. The ceiling just touched the top of my head when I stood straight. If I stood on my tiptoes, I could feel the strap of my mask touching the ceiling. I tried to guess what the room was for, but I couldn't figure it out. There was only one way in. There were no holes in the walls for wires or air vents. This space was completely closed off. I tapped the radio again. I swept my flashlight beam back and forth. "There's a hallway going deeper," I said. "Is someone watching my back?" "Yes, someone is right outside," the operator assured me. "Go ahead." I took a few more steps. I pointed my flashlight down the hallway. The light did not reach the end. The hallway was so long it made me feel dizzy. For a short moment, it felt like it was pulling me in. A worrying thought came to me. Maybe this is what it feels like to get lost, to face an endless dark hole with no way back. Maybe Elliot felt something like this at some point. I found this feeling unsettling. I was only a few feet from the entrance, but I decided not to take any risks. I turned to leave. As I did, the door swung shut. At first, I didn't understand what happened. A door closing is not always a big deal. Maybe it was not aligned right. Maybe a breeze pushed it. That was not the case here. The door was solid metal. It would not have closed by accident. I grabbed the handle. I turned it and pulled, but it would not move. I couldn't even push it down. "I'm trapped," I said on the radio. "The door closed. I cannot open it." "Sorry about that. It does happen," the operator sighed. "Some of these hinges are rusted shut. Stay by the door. Someone will come to get you. Keep your flashlight on." I stayed by the door for at least 20 minutes. Sometimes I knocked to see if anyone would answer. No one did. After a while, my flashlight started to flicker. It was too soon for the batteries to be dead. "Okay, I'm losing light here," I said. "Someone needs to get me out now." "They are having trouble finding your door," the operator replied. "Far end of the right-hand hallway, section C, past the boiler." "Is that what you said?" "That is correct. There is no door there. There is an open door frame and what looks like a closet, but no door." "That is impossible. Look, you might have gotten wrong directions. If you went past the boilers, you could be in section C or D. They are parallel hallways. In that case, you can just follow the right-hand wall until you reach the other side. Another search party is already there. Right-hand wall, other hallway." "Understood." I followed their instructions. I held my fading flashlight. As I walked through the seemingly endless tunnel, the light finally went out. It was complete darkness. I could close my eyes, and nothing would look different. To be surrounded by such darkness is very confusing. You start to imagine how easy it is to get so lost that you wonder if you are actually lost. Still, I kept my hand pressed against the wall and moved to the right. Is it much further? I asked. I cannot hear them. It is a long way. There should be some working pipes running overhead about halfway through. So, tell me as soon as you hear running water. I could hear nothing but my own breathing echoing in the passage. But if there was running water ahead, I would not miss it. I kept my hand on the smooth concrete wall and moved one step at a time. You have to move carefully. Even a small change in the floor can make you fall face first. When you are in long darkness, your mind tries to fill in the blanks. You start to imagine pictures of the space around you. Plays tricks on what you see and feel. For example, I started to think I was running my hand over wallpaper instead of concrete. It was smooth enough that, while walking, you might trick yourself. But if you are using only your fingertips to feel your surroundings, you can imagine yourself in all kinds of places. My childhood home had textured wallpaper with a rough feel. It did not take a big leap of imagination to pretend I was back there. I imagined sneaking to the bathroom in the middle of the night. I eventually took off my gloves to get a better feel with my fingertips. I reached a point where the path split. I still had not heard any running water. I used the radio and reported in. There's a split here, I said. Should I go right or straight ahead? A split? The operator asked. There should not be a split. Are you sure? Yes, there is a split. Straight ahead or another right turn? Wait, a voice mumbled back. Wait, wait, wait. Do not tell me. Is the ceiling unusually low? Yes. Why did you not mention that? Oh dear. This changes things. I could hear quiet talking in the background. The operator forgot to let go of the talk button for a moment. Then they came back to me. This is going to get rather complicated. It turned out there were 3 more rooms that matched my description. None of them were in the sections I had said. I must have gone very far off course. I had to walk further to gather information. This information would help them figure out which room I was in. But this was harder than they expected. For example, one hallway was supposed to lead to a junction. Another was supposed to lead to a ceiling grate. But the room at the end of the hallway was unfinished. So its original purpose was impossible to know. I had to go deeper to find out exactly where I was. Sometimes I found ladders, but they led nowhere. There were supposed to be entry points from the street level, but those had been sealed and paved over long ago. I still had to climb each one just to make sure none were missed. The mask on my face felt more and more suffocating. Felt like my body was squeezed in a tight space. Even though I could move my arms, I could feel the tight feeling of the stone structure in my chest. It beat in a strange rhythm with my speeding up heartbeat. If I focused on it too much, I found myself struggling to breathe. I pushed myself down another hallway. I reached a dead end. There was a round hole in the wall. It was just big enough for my body to fit through. That is good. That is really good. The operator reassured me. This means there is space for heating. If my math is right, you are in one of these 2 hallways. I need you to go in. Absolutely not. It will slope down for about 5 feet and then go either straight ahead or up. If it goes up, you will reach the surface. I can arrange for someone to meet you there. If it goes forward, you must go forward, then turn left and then go forward again. This will put you in the same hallway as me. No matter which way, you must keep going. I put one knee against the opening and felt its edges. It was too narrow for me to crawl on all 4s. I had to push my torso in and pull myself forward with my palms. The concrete was so smooth I could not get a good grip with my fingers. It didn't matter if I wore gloves or not. My equipment kept catching on the edges. I stopped to drink some water. I splashed some on my face. I tried to psych myself up. 5 feet, then up or forward. That was the instruction. I crawled in inch by painful inch. I had to stay calm. If I tried to take a deep breath, I could feel my gear pressing against the walls. It didn't hurt, but it was a constant reminder of how alone I was. My heartbeat pounded in my ears. There was nothing to distract me. There was not even a tiny echo. I felt the tunnel tilt slightly downward. Not a lot, but enough that going back would be impossible. If I went forward, there would be no chance to return. Not unless I found enough space to turn around. "Are you sure it is only a few feet?" I asked. "Are you absolutely sure? There are only 2 rooms with that particular curve. No matter which one you are in or which way you are coming from, you will get out soon." I swallowed. I could feel sweat stinging my eyes. I really wanted to take off my mask. Felt like that was the only problem. But I had to stay rational. I pushed myself forward and slid down. The tunnel leveled out. I felt around for an upward exit but could not find one. This meant our guess about my exact location was correct. I had no choice but to move forward. My palms were so covered in dust I could barely hold on. I had to roll onto my back. I used the rubber soles of my shoes for grip. I effectively pushed myself backward. I could feel the warmth of my breath building up along the tunnel walls. Then the tunnel opened up. The change was so sudden I lost my balance. I tumbled out headfirst in an uncontrolled way. I did an awkward roll, landing hard on my left hip and shoulder. It was not a big fall, but enough to maybe sprain something. I did not want to think about how bad the bruising might be. I held my radio and gripped it like it was my lifeline. "I'm out," I moaned. "I've reached a room. There is only one way forward," the operator said. "Go forward, then take a left, and go forward again. Once you see the light, tell me. I am at the other end." "Is that it? Is that really it?" "There is no other possible way." I stood up, brushed myself off, and checked my gear. Everything was there. Things would be okay. I followed the instructions. I went forward and turned left. At the next fork, I went straight ahead. I checked my position with the operator at every step. They assured me it was just around the corner, a matter of minutes at most. At one point, they said they were hitting a pipe with a wrench. They said I should be able to hear it any moment. Now, I just had to go straight until I found a door. I was jogging, keeping my hand on the wall for balance. There were small dents in the wall about every 10 feet. These were meant to hold pipes. I would walk, feel the dent, walk, feel the dent over and over. Then, my hand brushed against a face. Open eyes, a nose, teeth, and hair. I stopped and jumped back. My hand shook like I had touched a hot stove. "Is anyone there?" I asked. There was no answer. I had an internal debate. Should I go back and check more? Or should I keep going? Maybe it was the missing person. We were, after all, still searching for someone. The search had not been officially called off. I took a couple of steps back. I carefully reached out my right hand. My fingers expected to feel skin. I could almost imagine its warmth. But as I reached further, all I felt was concrete. No one was there. I searched carefully but found nothing. However, I did hear a faint metallic sound. Something stuck to my shoe. It was a small key. It had a design carved into it like a sunflower, maybe a blue one. I put it in my pocket with the first aid kit. I continued forward, making sure I had not gotten turned around. As I reached the end of the hallway, I reached for the door. "All right, this is it," I said. "I cannot hear you, but I am at the end of the hallway. There is a door there. Just open it, and I will have someone meet you." I fumbled around, looking for a handle. I could not find one. I checked that wall 3 times, every inch of it. It was a dead end. "There is nothing here," I gasped. "There is absolutely nothing here. Calm yourself. It should be on your left." "There is nothing on my left, nothing on my right. It is a dead end. It is an absolute." I hit my head with the radio. I heard a click. Not the sound of something breaking, but of something locking into place. I turned the radio over in my hand. I felt the back. The battery cover had been slightly open. That hit had moved it back into the right position. I opened the cover just to make sure I had secured it properly. I discovered there were no batteries inside the radio. I checked twice, then 3 times. There were no batteries. "Hello?" I asked. "Operator." I held the radio to my lips. I clicked the receiver a couple of times. No sound came out, only the hollow clack of plastic. "Hello?" There was no reply. I sank against the wall. I took a moment to gather my thoughts. It made no sense. The battery cover had been closed even when I hit my head with the radio. I would have heard 2 batteries fall to the floor. I could not have lost them earlier. If I had, the operator would not have been able to talk to me in the hallway. Something was very wrong. I swept my hands across the floor. I checked if the batteries were somewhere there. They were not, but I could not just stay in the darkness and wait. I had to do something. I had to try something. This was another puzzle to solve. There is always a solution. Sometimes you have to make the best of what you have. By this point, I had built a mental map. All these years of solving problems had trained me to collect and remember information. It was like saying the alphabet backward. I just had to follow a learned sequence. I decided to go back the way I came. I would try to find my way back to my starting point. I made my way back to the hole in the wall. I climbed inside. The upward climb would be hard, but I felt confident I could do it. I crawled, reaching out with my hands. I felt the tunnel go down further. I stopped suddenly. My mind was spinning. This was impossible. I had been crawling downward. Could not possibly lead further down. I crawled a little further. I stretched my arm out as far as it could go. This could not have been the path I had taken. Were there 2 separate tunnels? That was the only explanation that made sense. I pushed myself all the way back out, but I could not find a second hole in the wall. I thought I must have gotten turned around at some point. Maybe I took a wrong turn. Maybe I went straight instead of right at a fork, or something like that. I had to carefully and methodically map my surroundings. 1 room and hallway at a time. It is very easy to doubt yourself in the dark. You have nothing but your thoughts and feelings, and those are easy to misunderstand. Moving through an unknown place can be very hard. This is true even in places you think you know well. Just ask anyone who has needed a bathroom during a total blackout. I found myself deep under the earth. I was in a place no one had mapped. I had no light and no sense of direction. Felt like I had been wandering forever. I managed to map 2 splitting passages. They led to 3 different rooms and 4 areas that were total dead ends. There were no doors to be found, except for 1 hole in the wall that opened into a tunnel. And yes, I checked it again very carefully. The tunnel always went down. No, I did not go down that path. My exploration finally brought me to one of the smaller rooms. I rolled up my bright safety vest. I made it into a makeshift pillow. I drank some water. I carefully saved the rest for later. Then I ate a chocolate bar. By then, the others were probably looking for me. I tried to ignore the problem of the radio. It was a subject that made my stomach feel uneasy. No matter how I replayed the scene in my mind, it would not make sense. If the device had been broken from the start, then the problem was with me. If it only stopped working after the last click of the battery cover, then batteries must have been on the floor. I searched thoroughly, but found none. But their absence was not definitively proven. Still, a clear answer escaped me. So I spent the night in that underground space. It is very hard to sleep when you are in such deep darkness. After a while, the difference between open and closed eyes becomes unclear. You lose track of whether you are asleep or awake. The line between imagination and real life becomes as thin as paper. You start to see your dreams as real events. It's possible that someone could be in the same room. They could be just inches away, and I would have no way to know they were there. It was the first time in many years that I thought about Elliot. Not just the hard fact that he disappeared, but Elliot as a person. I thought about what he might have felt in those last hours, or maybe days. Was he with someone else? Or did he just fade into the darkness? He and I had always been very similar. Most likely, our last thoughts would have been the same. And if these were truly my last moments, I was filled with fear. He too would have been terrified. I tried to push these thoughts away. There was no definite knowledge to be gained. Thinking about the worst-case scenarios helped no one. He could have run away. He could have eloped with a charming young woman. He could have started a life in some communal living situation. He might show up decades later. You cannot predict the future. Yet, a part of me felt a strange certainty. It knew he had gone to a place of deep darkness, place with no return. Maybe it was the next day, or maybe just hours later. But at some point, I woke myself up. I decided to check the tunnel one more time. There had to be some kind of misunderstanding. I took my last drink of water. I started to retrace the mental map I had built. The layout seemed changed. There were more rooms and shorter hallways. If you made 2 left turns, a set of stairs would appear. There was a bigger room with a floor designed for liquid to drain. I would walk the same hallway many times, and I could have sworn its length changed. I would carefully count my steps. I would always get the same number. Yet one time it would take a minute to walk, and the next time it would take 2. I felt a disturbing sense that my own sanity was slipping away. Every time I tried to logically understand that place, it seemed to change and twist. It was as if its construction was incomplete in many ways. It resembled an approximation of space and size. After my 3rd loop of the same rooms, still with no clear pattern, I decided to rest. I leaned back. I rested the back of my head against the wall. It was like trying to shake out a brilliant idea. Instead, I picked up the radio. I turned on the receiver. I adjusted the dials. At that moment, it was just a plastic object. It was no more useful than a paperweight. I looked at its back. I unfastened the battery cover. Still no power. Then an unexpected sound. "There's a way out, you know." A voice crackled from the radio. It resonated inside me. Felt like a vibration tickling the back of my mind. "You're not real," I whispered. "I'm hallucinating." "Are you sure?" It's like a sensory deprivation chamber. If your senses stop getting input from outside, your brain starts making random signals to stay active. Otherwise, it starts to break down. So, I am just a random brain signal? One would assume so. Interesting, the voice continued. That means that whatever I say is a version of yourself. No, it's just random noise. You might as well be the meowing of a cat or wind blowing through leaves. But what do I sound like to you? Try to classify me. Figure out who I am. Who am I? A quick note. I found it amazing how this person stayed so calm. He was talking to a voice that was either a ghost or a product of his own imagination. And his response was, "You're not real. Be quiet." Okay, let's continue. The voice belonged to a man. It was hard to tell his exact age over a radio, but I guessed he was not a teenager or very old. He sounded like an adult, maybe middle-aged. He had a subtle way of speaking that sounded a bit like my own speech. That was a curious detail. "Where does that accent come from?" I asked. "Wherever you want it to come from." A clever dodge. I wonder why I'm imagining you with that particular trait. Perhaps you are trying to say something. Why would I care about some random person with an accent? Perhaps I am not a random person. I pulled the radio away. I closed my eyes. I shook my head. "Don't say that," I whispered. "Don't say things like that." I continued to wander through the darkness for a while. I desperately tried to make sense of my surroundings. The number of steps on the staircase changed. The hallway turned right instead of left. The ceiling was lower. The slope of the floor in the big room was steeper. I thought I felt a door handle. But when I went back, I realized it was a fitting for a loose pipe. I talked out loud during this time. I got occasional responses from the radio. I understood it was not real, but it kept my inner thoughts from turning into something harmful. I needed to stay focused on the task. I needed to find a way forward. There had to be a path ahead. There is no such thing as a space you cannot escape. The operator was not trying to trick me or make crazy claims. Most of the time, he just listened. He would add a short comment when I made a factual mistake or a bad decision. And when I found myself back in the same room I had been in countless times before, pulling at my hair in pure frustration, that voice cut through. It was clear and distinct. "Would you like a suggestion? You're not real. Then what is there to lose?" "It makes no sense," I snapped back. "I'm talking to a wall. Whatever comes from this, at best, is a coincidence. Do you have any better ideas?" Angry, I threw the radio across the room. Its pieces shattered against the opposite wall. I heard the plastic clatter. I watched it tumble down the slanted floor. Some of the smaller pieces disappeared through a small grate in the center of the room. I pressed my hands against my ears. I tried to quiet the noise in my mind. "Are you finished?" The voice was no longer coming from the radio. It echoed through my very being. It was as if my bones were receiving a signal. I was at a loss for words. Before I could say anything, it answered for me. "Then let's proceed." All my ideas were used up. My throat felt dry. My head swam from the long stress. I could feel an overwhelming tiredness sinking into my limbs. It slowed my movements to a sluggish pace. I dragged my feet. I no longer touched the walls. If I tripped or hit an obstacle, so be it. That was okay. The operator offered a few suggestions. Take a left turn instead of going straight. Stay to the right. 3 steps back, then a sharp left. When I could manage to filter out that voice from the internal noise, I followed his instructions. Gradually, subtly, I began to see changes. New rooms appeared. The air felt heavier. A strange smell filled the air. The concrete texture changed. It became more porous. Maybe this was not an improvement, but at least it was something new. I started to notice unfamiliar sounds. Machines hummed above. Pressurized air hissed just out of sight. I could hear water flowing. "Why did you guide me to this place?" I asked. "You tricked me into coming here." "You were already tricked," the voice replied. "I have been trying to get you out, but it keeps changing the surroundings. You told me I could enter and that I had support behind me. I was trying to calm your anxiety while I figured things out." "Figured out what?" "What is happening here? It wants you to go in a particular direction. Have you never wondered why you are always drawn to check places you are not allowed to explore? It wants you to find it, and you are now dangerously close to doing so. And believe me, that is not something you want." "Why not?" I asked, shrugging. "Why would I not want that?" "Because I know what happens when someone goes too far, when there is no chance of returning. Such things want to be found in deep, hidden places." I hit the side of my head. It was like trying to improve mental reception, as if that action might somehow filter out the extra thoughts. I came to another fork in the path, a fork leading left and right. I turned right. The operator's voice returned to my ear. "Go in the opposite direction," he advised. "You are getting too close. You must turn away." I ignored his advice. I pressed on until I could detect something. Ahead there were sounds, indistinct murmuring. My heart pounded as I hurried forward. "Please turn back," the operator pleaded. "Turn around immediately." I could hear people talking. I rounded a corner. For the first time in days, I saw a door. I could clearly see a door. A faint glow came from under it. I could hear footsteps in the next room. I rushed toward it and pushed down on the handle. Someone on the other side called out. They asked if anyone was there. "The key," the operator begged. "I left you a key." I pressed the handle and paused. I fumbled with my right hand. I felt the key still in my pocket. I had completely forgotten about it. "There is an exit, but this is not it. I promise you this is not the way. Please do not go in." "Why not?" I whispered. "They are right there. It is not real. I made the same mistake. Do not enter." My hand stayed on the handle. Someone urged me to open it. Someone asked me to take a look. They were laughing with relief. They expressed their joy at finally finding me. But something felt wrong. I stepped back. "Open the door on your side," I said out loud. "It is not working." There was no answer, not even a whisper. They offered a string of excuses. Someone said they were busy. Someone said it wouldn't open from their end. Someone pretended not to hear me. The key in my pocket felt heavier. I traced the outline of the carved sunflower with my thumb. This was real. That was a real object. Whatever was beyond that door was not. I stepped back. As I did, the light behind the door went out. The voices vanished. The hallway fell into a sudden, deep silence. "What should I do?" I whispered. "What do you suggest?" The operator whispered back. "Go the other way, and do not stop for anything." I turned and ran. The door creaked shut behind me. I heard the sound of wet flesh slapping against the concrete floor. It was a clumsy, awkward gait. I moved straight ahead, then made a sharp turn. The air grew progressively thicker and warmer. I reached out my hand along the right wall. only for it to change. The concrete became hot and soft. It resembled sand found on a beach. Soon, the grains refined into a substance more like sludge. It felt like dragging your hand across raw chicken. "It wants you to stop," the operator warned. "It is trying to distract you. Keep going." The hallway would tighten and expand. It was like a living thing breathing. Sometimes the floor would ripple. It was as if it was trying to swallow me. I could feel it tilting at different angles. This caused the path forward to twist and bend. One moment I was moving forward. The next, the hallway angled upward. I had to use ridges in the floor to climb what felt like a makeshift ladder. Then I would tumble onto my back. I clung on precariously as I was thrown in every direction. All the while, something at the bottom waited for me to fall. Something that had come out of that door. Something that had grown tired of playing games. I was completely soaked when I reached what felt like a dead end. A thick, sticky substance covered the wall, yet I could push against it. It felt like trying to poke a soap-covered balloon. Using scissors from the first aid kit, I managed to make a hole. It was big enough for my hand. I ripped through it as something shrieked in pain, not with sound, but with convulsive motion and a surge of heat. I felt the compressed air press against my eardrums. This made my sense of balance waver. A door stood at the end of the hallway. It was secured by a chain. "This is it," the operator said. "Get the key. Get the key and leave." It was coming down the hall. It was moving directly toward me. The speed was amazing. How could it move so fast? I reached for my key. I felt around for a lock. There was indeed one. I put the key in. I turned it and pulled. Click echoed. The chain fell to the floor. As I swung the door open and dashed through, I paused for a moment to close it behind me. In doing so, I glimpsed something staring back at me from the darkness. It had skin the color of milk. Its eyes were shrunken. It had the grotesquely long mouth of an invertebrate predator. The door slammed shut. I staggered back, gasping for breath. Light was present here. The operator's voice reached me, though it was faint. I could hear scratching sounds. It was like interference, as if I were just beyond his reach. "Just keep moving," he instructed. "Not far now. I have it from here." "What about you?" I asked. "Are you still there?" I took the wrong route. I hesitated. I glanced back. The light was dim, but my eyes were still adjusting. I could not focus. "Is that really you?" I asked. "I mean, the real you?" A brief silence followed as the world gradually came into view. The operator thought for a moment, then sighed. "It is what it is," he said. "Later, Gator." I followed the hum of machines. I emerged directly onto a platform. Early commuters saw me exiting a service tunnel. Shortly after, a janitor approached. I was incoherent at that point. When police arrived to escort me, I was delirious. It took them several hours to confirm my identity. I was of little help. I had been wandering those underground depths for nearly 3 full days. I was severely dehydrated. They had found the missing urban explorer. They redirected their rescue efforts toward me. They tried to pinpoint exactly where I had strayed from the known path. No one succeeded in finding the black door I described, nor the hallway where it was supposedly located. Retracing my steps proved impossible. Nothing matched my account. They could offer no explanation for my experience. My clothes were covered in a fine layer of hydrochloric acid and potassium chloride. This mixture resembles stomach fluid. It was as if I had traveled through a giant, diluted digestive system. There were interviews, questionnaires, and even a short feature in a local newspaper. Most discussions centered on the primal fear of being lost in darkness and its psychological effects. This fascination faded after about a week. I resumed my regular activities as if nothing had happened. I still occasionally join search and rescue missions as a volunteer. I am more careful, certainly, but you cannot fundamentally change your nature overnight. And yet, I believe something has indeed changed. I ask different questions nowadays, and I'm not sure if I truly want the answers. I cannot definitively state what I did during those 3 days. I cannot state the nature of my experiences, but I recall what I heard. I know I was not alone. And in those rare moments when I entertain the idea that it was all a fabrication, a fanciful product of my subconscious, I open the top drawer of my nightstand. There, I keep a small key. It has a carved sunflower on it. It is a memento left for me in the deep darkness. Wow, that was an incredible story. Kudos to Saturdead. You absolutely nailed it. It was exceptionally well done. It truly requires a brilliant mind to craft something of such caliber. When the original poster touched the face, it genuinely sent a shiver down my spine. I've seen a comment from the original poster suggesting that perhaps the individual whose face it was is the one who dropped the key. Again, I highly recommend exploring more of Saturdead's written works. All their associated links are provided in the description below. In any event, if you enjoyed today's video, please give it a like and subscribe. I upload new content every single day. And a massive thank you goes out to my channel members. Your support is invaluable. If you wish to further contribute to the channel's upkeep, the relevant link is also in the description. Your contributions are greatly appreciated, though by no means obligatory. Thank you for watching, and I will see you tomorrow. Peace.